Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. A distinguished professor of political science and sociology at the CUNY Graduate Center, Frances Fox Piven has long been a hero of mine. Brilliant and provocative as a writer and teacher, she's always been an important leader in the struggle for economic and social justice. Now she exhorts us to take action to protect the democracy we call ours. And welcome.
So glad to talk to you, Ronnie.
So, thank you. You're an old strategist, troublemaker from way back, right?
Yeah, I tried to be.
You tried.
I've always tried to be.
And you wrote this wonderful column about resist in the nation. But it took me back to 65, was it, or 66, with the plan to end poverty and the strategy that you and your husband planned, right?
Right. It was called A Strategy to End Poverty.
Yeah. And it was based on making as much trouble for the system to create the crisis that we can respond, that the government has to respond to.
Well, yeah, it was, but it was really, it was based on a lot of work, a lot of academic work. We had research responsibilities at one of the first poverty programs, Mobilization for Youth. And we were struck by the fact that so many people from the neighborhood, so many women, came in to see the social workers because they didn't have money to pay the rent or to get shoes for their kids when school was starting. And the social workers helped them get on welfare. Well, we tracked that, and it raised a question for us, which was, well, why weren't they on welfare to begin with? The welfare departments across the country had ways of evading people, rejecting them, no matter what their situation and no matter the legality of their application. So we thought and talked and worried about what would happen if those people who were legally eligible actually applied for welfare and got on welfare. And we traced out the consequences. It would make trouble for the cities, it would be politically difficult, trouble for the states, but it was a time like this. It was a time when people were on the move, were very agitational. And under those conditions, the Democratic government in Washington would want to keep things under control and would probably propose a reform to the welfare system. So to avert a kind of political conflict at the very center of their power, Democratic government, center of their power is the big cities. We thought that there'd be a push for welfare reform. And you know, a lot of people looking at this thought, oh, this is horrible. People shouldn't be on welfare. It'll make them dependent. It'll make them promiscuous. And they also worried, especially the people who became neocons, they also worried that it would create splits in the Democratic Party. Now, as a longtime politician, Ronnie,
Right.
you know about that kind of concern. Don't do anything, it'll create divisions.
Right.
So,
North and South. I remember I worked for John Lindsay several years after that. But even then, I mean, and we were still talking about welfare reform. And it was more than that. It was a guaranteed income, right? That was the concept. George McGovern ran on that proposal, didn't he?
yeah, he wanted to give $4,000 a year to every poor family.
Right, just as a basis, I guess, to start or
Well,
something.
at that time, 4,000, it was
a lot of money,
imaginable
yeah.
that you could live on that.
Right, but we had people coming to New York City because New York City had higher benefits than people in Mississippi. I remember that, you know.
Well, everybody said they were all coming for welfare.
Yeah,
but
everybody
actually,
said that. They didn't.
We had data on that.
Yeah.
And people didn't come for welfare. They came for jobs. They were being pushed off the plantations because
The cotton gin and the whole...
their labor was no longer needed.
Yeah.
So
It's incredible.
the welfare departments in the South gave them bus tickets to come to New York or Chicago or Boston. They didn't want them in the South.
With no follow-up.
Yeah.
Right. So how can we relate that to today? I mean, that was a time of Vietnam War, civil rights. It was, as you said, it was a churning time.
Well, it was
There
a
were so many
time of
people.
a great movement. It was the Black Freedom Movement, which unfolded first in the South in protest against Jim Crow arrangements, segregation, and the stripping blacks of the right to vote in the South. But in the North, the demands at the movement came north because the people were coming north. There was no way for them to survive in the South. And as the movement emerged in the North, its demands were different because we didn't have segregated buses. And people could vote in most northern cities. So in the North, the movement focused on economic demands. And, you know, one of those demands was a demand for assistance, but the main demand was always jobs. People,
They need to survive.
you know, poor people have as much animus toward welfare as the larger society. This is not actually a good thing, it's a bad thing because it makes it shameful to get the assistance that you need for yourself and your children. But people don't like to go on welfare.
I've always been struck by the lack of empathy for poor people and the stress they live under. I mean, even if you get assistance, the stress that you're living under is so great. And I don't think we realize that. I mean, I think in a way, the spirit of a lot of poor people is amazing.
Oh, yes. And
that points to your point that they don't want to just take, they want to have the right to have a good life, right?
I remember in the late 1960s going to lots of meetings of mothers, poor mothers, sometimes in somebody's living room, sometimes in a church basement. And the reason for the meeting is we were planning a demonstration of some kind around a welfare issue. But what the women also wanted to talk about, and to talk about first actually, was why they were entitled to welfare, because that was something they wanted to straighten out in their own heads. And as they talked about it, going back and forth, they more or less decided that they were entitled to welfare because they were mothers and they were trying hard to be good mothers and to raise their children, take care of their children, and that was worthwhile. That was an important contribution to society. So, and that was a kind of progress for them because it gave them spine. But there was an irony because at just that moment in historic time, the movement of better educated women was taking off, the feminist movement, which was a movement of people like me and like you, who were prepared to make our way in the professions, in the managerial ranks of the economy. And we were saying, we don't want to be moms.
Right.
We don't want to be what? We want to be part of public life. And that meant...
Yeah. But out of it all, we've never come up with a comprehensive childcare or early childhood education. Out of all of this, whether you talk it from our point of view or from the other point of view. I mean,
because you're so right when you point to childcare. Many years later, in 1996, they passed a bill which pretty much eliminated welfare as we know it in favor of something called the Personal Responsibility Act, which required that moms go to work.
right.
even mothers of very small children. But that bill did not include a provision for decent, comprehensive child care. The only child care was the child care provided by some moms who were forced off welfare, and they could take care in their kitchens of the kids of other moms who were being forced to go to work. We need to give the children of poor families who suffer all the burdens of poverty and social disorganization, we need to give them the best child care in the world.
It's so obvious.
For ourselves.
And why can we never get it? I just don't know. I don't know.
Because of the short-sighted greediness of the people who rule this country. And if you ever had any doubt about that, and I know you didn't, just look at Donald Trump's crowd now in the White House.
So let's go to Donald Trump. What are we going to do?
Well, I think that we're actually doing what is the most important first thing to do, which is the resistance. And it's now acquired a name. It's called the resistance. And I think it's so amazing and so heartening because it's everywhere. In small little villages in upstate New York, there's a chapter of Indivisible. Or in another small town I know in upstate New York, there's an Episcopal church that is going to be a sanctuary for immigrants. So this is, and you know, a lot of it is what we call spontaneous. Now, in a certain sense, nothing is spontaneous. All human animals think ahead, but it's spontaneous in the sense that no organization can claim credit for the plan. But look at how many, 4 million women the day after inauguration, or look at the people who flocked to the airports after the ban on immigrants from 7 Muslim countries. And nobody planned that. And I know my email was just alive with messages about, are you going, are you going? And I would forward everything, but that's how it happened. And so a lot of groups are now saying, well, they're coordinating. I can't tell you how many coordinators we have, but that really is okay.
They're recruiting coordinators also. That's interesting. Go on, I want to hear more.
Well, and there's another aspect of this that I think should be very heartening, and that is the emphasis on solidarity among the different groups. You know, you're in this kind of politics, have been for a long time, and you know how much peevishness and sectarianism there usually is among groups, not just groups on the left, but everybody. Not now. Not now. Everybody is with everybody else. And so the inclusiveness is very, very cheering. It's produced by the threat, the horror of the Trump regime. You really have to ask, what do movements do that makes them effective, that makes them powerful levers for forcing governmental action and forcing the government to bring corporate interests along or plantation interests along? And part of what movements do is what we're seeing. Movements are great communicators. You know there's a movement when there's a big banner and there's a march and there are drums and that, and so movements communicate to the public. That's partly recruiting, and they also communicate to the members of the movement, to themselves. They show. I don't know where you were the day after the election when Trump was announced the winner. But I wandered around the city a little bit, and in every park there were groups of young people who had gathered together. They were giving speeches, they were chanting. What were they doing? I think they were showing their own strength to themselves. That's an important part of building the morale of the movement.
Right.
But that's not how movements win. That's how movements sort of self-develop.
So how do they win?
They win by making trouble. In effect, they find the various ways in which people can go on strike, can withdraw cooperation. Because we live in very complex societies that depend on intricate, detailed systems of cooperation. Look at a school system. Look at a fast food chain. Or look at Wall Street. That's an intricate system of cooperation. The people who go to work in Wall Street, they have to wait until the nannies come to take care of their kids and get dinner started, and they have to maneuver on very complicated traffic systems. It's all, and we all play a role in making those complicated systems work. Some people may play a bigger role than others, but everybody plays a role. You can't have Manhattan's pattern of pedestrian thoroughfares unless everybody plays their role, follows the rules, and cooperates. When movements are so energized and so indignant that they recruit people to withdraw cooperation, the movement becomes a force because things break down. That's how movements.
So you have to create a crisis.
We have to create a crisis.
Do you have any ideas?
I think that we can create a lot of crises, but because we have a lot of working people, we have a lot of school teachers, we have a lot of urban residents who have influence on their mayors. The mayors bank the city's money with the biggest banks. I mean, everything is related. We find the links, and we know some of the links, but this takes morale, it takes courage, and now the rocky part. We are dealing with not honed, traditional political leaders. We are dealing with a bunch of hustlers, lowlifes.
It's an interesting way of describing it, yes.
And we don't know exactly what they'll do. That's something to consider. For instance, Donald Trump is way down in the polls. The opposition to his initiatives was illustrated by the rallying that defeated the Affordable Care Act. He's unpopular. His program is certainly unpopular once people begin to understand it. That makes it very tempting, I think, for them to create their own kind of crisis. A Reichstag fire, which is how Hitler gained power in Germany, or a 9/11 crisis.
A war.
A war. And then also they're moving to crack down on protest, make it the penalties for protest very severe.
Sanctuary cities.
Sanctuary cities, but also just the fines and the jail terms.
And wait till we really understand the deregulation that they're doing.
Oh yeah, they have already done quite a bit of that, environmental deregulation. They're bringing coal back.
Right.
I remember coal. I grew up in New York City. I remember the windowsills were always flecked with black.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
It's so nice that they're not flecked with black anymore.
Right.
And I guess my lungs aren't flecked with black either.
So it's going to be a constant self-organizing outrage?
No, we have to become, I think it's better if we can become more strategic, and that means that we want more information about who is connected to who and how, if we put pressure on the local government officials to play hardball with the banks, then that's going to ricochet up to Goldman Sachs and to the federal government. We want to be...
We need boycotts like apartheid.
And we should be strategic. We should have... I want maps of how everything is connected to everything. But it doesn't mean that we don't do the kind of movement work that has been going on so encouragingly now.
The press, which is considered by the Trump people to be the enemy, how do you think they're doing?
Well, the press...
I think they're doing better and better.
Well, that's because you read the New York Times and the Washington Post.
Well, how do you bring people together? We're going to run out of time, but how do you take somebody from Fox to this and from the Times to Fox? I mean, how do we get it together? We never will.
I don't think we do. I think we... well, for one thing, the press is not as important as it used to be because of
the internet.
The internet, the rise of social media. So, and for another, those few newspapers that have stood up and stood strong have been wonderful. The New York Times talks a little bit like a movement organization. Washington Post, LA Times.
Websites that people could look at to begin to feel they're participating in this. Do you have some suggestions?
Well, Indivisible, MoveOn.org, I think SEIU.
I think there's even one called Resist.
Yeah, there's one called Resist.
And the one that comes from Washington staffers?
That's Indivisible.
Indivisible. That was such a brilliant thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah. And you're really hopeful that something's going to happen? Yes.
Well, yes and no. There's no choice.
Yeah.
We have to try to make something happen because these people could destroy the planet.
You're right. It's a very serious...
So we don't have any choice.
Do we just urge people to use their own common sense to understand what's going on?
No, we try to help each other understand. And so we need a lot of information. We have been getting more and more information, even in the couple of months since Trump won the election. So, yeah, we have to try, we need to know more.
We need to participate in our community, right?
Oh,
we didn't even get to voting, which has been something that you've been so involved with for so many years and concerned with. But we've come to the end of this program, which I just can't believe. And so I guess we're going to have another discussion.
That would be very nice.
Thank you so much, Frances. We at CUNY TV always like to hear from our viewers. So if you have any subjects you'd like to explore or people you'd like to hear, please let us know. Write to us at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or go to our website, cuny.tv, and click on Contact Us. We look forward to hearing from you.